Hi, I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading Running 1,000 Miles for Freedom by William and Ellen Crafts, and we are on part 1, video 6. So let's dive right in. Indictment. Commonwealth of Virginia in the Circuit Norfolk County SS Court. The grand jurors impaneled in the body of the said county on their oath present that Margaret Douglas, being an evil-disposed person, not having the fear of God before her eyes, but moved and instigated by the devil, wickedly, maliciously, and feloniously on the 4th day of July. On the 4th day of July. Independence Day. On the 4th day of July in the year of our Lord 1854 at Norfolk in said county, did teach a certain black girl named Kate to read in the Bible to the great displeasure of Almighty God, to the pernicious example of others in like case offending, contrary to the form of the statute in such case made and provided, and against the peace and dignity of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Whoo! Okay, so they're taking us through a court case. They do that, like it'll all come together. So on Independence Day in 1854, which is shortly after the worst of the fugitive slave laws was passed, by the way, in Virginia, one of the original 13 colonies, a woman, I assume she was white, was arrested for teaching a black girl to read. And she was teaching the black girl to read the Bible. So slavery, presumably, was to help those blacks be Christians and to save their souls. But don't teach them to read the Bible, because the Bible that they were learning was not what the Bible actually says. Okay, I'm all intrigued. Let's keep reading. Victor Vagabond, prosecuting attorney. Really, the attorney's last name is Vagabond? This is getting funnier and funnier. On this indictment, Mrs. Douglas was arraigned as a necessary matter of form, tried, found guilty, of course, and Judge Scalloway, like Scallywag? Okay, and Judge Scalloway, before whom she was tried, having consulted with Dr. Adams, ordered the sheriff to place Mrs. Douglas in the prisoner's box, when he addressed her as follows: Margaret Douglas, stand up. You are guilty of one of the vilest crimes that ever disgraced society, and the jury have found you so. Teaching someone to read was one of the vilest crimes that ever disgraced society. It's tempting to look at that now and be like, psh, that was crazy. That was 1854. We don't feel like that, except for, yeah, we actually really do feel like that. We have an alarmingly high number of adults in the U.S. who do not know how to read. Of that alarmingly high number, most of those are people of color, and our incarcerated population, their literacy rates are even lower. So I think we still do think it's criminal to teach people how to read, and we are finding that people who don't know how to read become criminals. I was talking with a law enforcement friend of mine the other day, and he said that even back in the 80s, they learned that children's literacy levels by third grade were great indicators of whether or not they would join gangs. If we knew in the 80s that reading and loving to read by the time you're in third grade could keep you from joining a gang, and we haven't done anything with that information, then yeah, we still do think teaching black people how to read is, what did they say, one of the vilest crimes that ever disgraced society. All right, let me get down off my soapbox. Let's keep reading. You have taught a slave girl to read in the Bible. No enlightened society can exist where such offenses go unpunished. The court in your case do not feel for you one solitary ray of sympathy, and they will inflict on you the utmost penalty of the law. In any other civilized country, you would have paid the forfeit of your crime with your life, and the court have only to regret that such is not the law in this country. The crime of teaching a black girl to read the Bible should be punishable by death, and they're sad that the law prohibits that? What? The sentence for your offense is that you be imprisoned 1 month in the county jail and that you pay the costs of this prosecution. Sheriff, remove the prisoner to jail. On the publication of these proceedings, the Doctors of Divinity preached each a sermon on the necessity of obeying the laws. The New York Observer noticed that with much pious gladness a revival of religion on Dr. Smith's plantation in Georgia among his slaves, while the Journal of Commerce commended this political preaching of the Doctors of Divinity because it favored slavery. Let us do nothing to offend our Southern brethren. However, at first, we were highly delighted at the idea of having gained permission to be absent for a few days. Okay, so there was very little segue from, from this court case to where we were earlier with William and Ellen. So they were getting ready for their escape and had obtained passes, and we talked about passes last time, had obtained passes from their masters to be gone, and William's master was like, I don't want you gone, come right back, and William was like, yeah, I'll come back when it's convenient, which'll be never. So that's where we are. However, at first, we were highly delighted at the idea of having gained permission to be absent for a few days, but when the thought flashed across my wife's mind that it was customary for travelers to register their names in the visitor's book at hotels, as well as in the clearance or custom house at Charleston, South Carolina, it made our spirits droop within us. So, while sitting in our little room upon the verge of despair, all at once my wife raised her head and with a smile upon her face, which was a moment before bathed in tears, said, I think I have it. I don't know if you watched The Backyardigans with your kids. We watched it a lot with ours. But at this point, they would have said, Eureka! When you find a what you seek-a. All right, sorry. I'll keep reading. I asked what it was. She said, I think I can make a poultice and bind up my right hand in a sling, and with propriety ask the officers to register my name for me. I thought that would do. It then occurred to her that the smoothness of her face might betray her, so she decided to make another poultice and put it in a white handkerchief to be worn under the chin, up the cheeks, and to tie over the head. This nearly hid the expression of the countenance as well as the beardless chin. The poultice is left off in the engraving because the likeness could not have been taken well with it on. They're talking about the engraving that accompanied the original book cover. My wife, knowing that she would be thrown a good deal into the company of gentlemen, fancied that she could get on better if she had something to go over the eyes. So I went to a shop and bought a pair of green spectacles. This was in the evening. Okay, so picture, if you will, a white woman. I'm not going to say a black woman because I'm asking you to picture. And if I ask you to picture a black woman, you will picture somebody who does not look like Ellen Craft. Picture a white woman with her right arm in a sling, her whole head tied up like she's got the mumps or something, so you can't see her face. You just see her eyes, except she's got on some green spectacles. This sounds suspect to me. Who's gonna look at this person and think, now there goes a white gentleman traveling with his slave? And that is actually one of the reasons passing works, racial passing. People see what they expect to see, not necessarily what is exactly in front of them. So if what is exactly in front of them looks a lot like what they expect to see, then they fill in the rest. And I don't know about you, but I am totally picturing some steampunk, like round green spectacles like maybe somebody wore in Wild Wild West or some other steampunk thing. Anyway, I've been on a lot of tangents. I've only read like a page. All right, I'm sorry. I'll keep going. We sat up all night discussing the plan and making preparations. Just before the time arrived in the morning for us to leave, I cut off my wife's hair square at the back of the head and got her to dress in the disguise and stand out on the floor. I found that she made a most respectable-looking gentleman. My wife had no ambition whatever to assume this disguise and would not have done so had it been possible to have obtained our liberty by more simple means. But we knew it was not customary in the South for ladies to travel with male servants, and therefore, notwithstanding my wife's fair complexion, it would have been a very difficult task for her to have come off as a free white lady with me as her slave. In fact, her not being able to write would have made this quite impossible. We knew that no public conveyance would take us or any other slave as a passenger without our master's consent. This consent could never be obtained to pass into a free state. My wife's being muffled in the poultices, etc., furnished a plausible excuse for avoiding general conversation, of which most Yankee travelers are passionately fond. There are a large number of free Negroes residing in the southern states, but in Georgia, and I believe in all slave states, every colored person's complexion is prima facie evidence of his being a slave. And in the lowest villain in the country, should he be a white man, has the legal power to arrest and question in the most inquisitorial and insulting manner any colored person, male or female, that he may find at large, particularly at night and on Sundays, without a written pass, signed by the master or someone in authority, or stamped free papers certifying that the person is the rightful owner of himself. You needed a paper to certify you were the rightful owner of yourself. I couldn't be walking around. They would just stop me. They'd be like, hey, girl. Not like, hey, girl. Hey, girl, where are you going? Who's your master? Let me see your papers. And then my not having papers might have turned into a, hey, girl, but not a, hey, girl I would have wanted anything to do with. And all of that was one sentence. That's a pretty impressive sentence. If the colored person refuses to answer questions put to him, he may be beaten, and his defending himself against this attack makes him an outlaw, and if he be killed on the spot, the murderer will be exempted from all blame. But after the colored person has answered the questions put to him in a most humble and pointed manner, he may then be taken to prison, and should it turn out, after further examination, that he was caught where he had no permission or legal right to be, and that he has not given what they term a satisfactory account of himself, the master will have to pay a fine. On his refusing to do this, the poor slave may be legally and severely flogged by public officers. Should the prisoner prove to be a free man, he is most likely to be both whipped and fined. Oh, you're free? Let's whip you and fine you, and then let you go. No apology at all. Quite frankly, it sounds familiar. It sounds alarmingly familiar from 1848, I think was when they escaped. From 1848 until 2020, all of that still sounds alarmingly familiar. Which is why we need to read stuff like this. Because if we don't know history, it'll just repeat and repeat and repeat. And quite frankly, I'm tired of the repetition. The great majority of slaveholders hate this class of persons with a hatred that can only be equaled by the condemned spirits of the infernal regions. They have no mercy upon nor sympathy for any Negro whom they cannot enslave. They say that God made the black man to be a slave for the white, and act as though they really believed that all free persons of color are in open rebellion to a direct command from heaven, and that they, the whites, are God's chosen agents to pour out upon them unlimited vengeance. Wow. Let's read that again. They say that God made the black man to be a slave for the white and act as though they really believed that all free persons of color are in open rebellion to a direct command from heaven, and that they, the whites, are God's chosen agents to pour out upon them unlimited vengeance. Wow. Okay, so they claimed that they believed free black people were rebelling a direct command from heaven, and that God made the white people to pour out on the free black people unlimited vengeance. Enter the KKK. Enter white supremacy. Enter all kinds of evil into society in the name of God. God never intended for people to treat each other like this. Did God make us different? Yeah, He made us different on purpose. He didn't make us different because one is better than another. I mean, He had His own reasons, but quite frankly, I think it's interesting that we're all different from one another because it highlights so many of the ways in which we are the same. All right, let's see, how much more do we have before a good, no, how much more do we have before a good stopping? Well, we've got a little bit to go before a good stopping point. Let me read like another page or so. All right, I'll keep reading. For instance, a bill has been introduced in the Tennessee legislature to prevent free Negroes from traveling on the railroads in that state. It has passed the first reading. The bill provides that the president who shall permit a free Negro to travel on any road within the jurisdiction of the state under his supervision shall pay a fine of $500. Any conductor permitting a violation of the act shall pay $250. Provided such free Negro is not under the control of a free white citizen of Tennessee, provided such free Negro is not under the control of a free white citizen of Tennessee. If I am free and I am under the control of a free white citizen, does that really make me free? I submit to you that it does not. Provided such free Negro is not under the control of a free white citizen of Tennessee who will vouch for the character of said free Negro in a penal bond of $1,000. The state of Arkansas has passed a law to banish all free Negroes from its bounds, and it came into effect on the first day of January 1860. Every free Negro found there after that date will be liable to be sold into slavery, the crime of freedom being unpardonable. Whoa. So you're free. You're free. You've got papers that show you are your own master. You have some white person vouching for you that you are free. And your freedom becomes an unpardonable crime and you get ousted from your state? My goodness. And if you don't get ousted, you will get sold into slavery. Doesn't matter that you're free. Okay, all right. We're getting to at least a paragraph in because I'm all riled up. All right. The Missouri Senate has before it a bill providing that all free Negroes above the age of 18 years who shall be found in the state after September 1860 shall be sold into slavery, and that all such Negroes as shall enter the state after September 1861 and remain there 24 hours shall also be sold into slavery forever. That's my state, Missouri. That's where I live. Missouri, the quasi-free state. But that's a whole different story about Missouri. I mean, it wasn't a free state, but I said quasi-free because I don't have time to get into it. Let's just stop there. Missouri was a slave state. Illinois was a free state. Missouri and Illinois, super close to each other. lots of stuff going on. Anyway, I don't want to make it seem like Missouri was a free state, because it wasn't. There's just some things that are interesting to me about Missouri and slavery, which is why I said a quasi-free state, but it wasn't. It was a slave state. So let's just leave it at that. I'll keep reading. Mississippi, Kentucky, and Georgia, and in fact I believe all the slave states, are legislating in the same manner. Thus the slaveholders make it almost impossible for free persons of color to get out of the slave states in order that they may sell them into slavery if they don't go. You're free, you have to leave, but it's really hard for you to leave, so we're just going to sell you into slavery. If no white persons traveled upon railroads except those who could get someone to vouch for their character and a penal bond of $1,000, the railroad companies would soon go to the wall. Such mean legislation is too low for comment, therefore I leave the villainous acts to speak for themselves. All right, we'll stop here. Let me mark my spot. At least attempt to mark my spot. Okay, and so that's our reading for today of Running 1,000 Miles for Freedom by William and Ellen Craft. I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda.